I had a producer friend of mine whom I really respect.
Yeah.
One time tell me that, and I'm paraphrasing, but she said, "You know, Greg, I actually think your value as a producer comes from your relationships." And now I'm just fine, I want to like lean into that more going forward.
Totally.
Welcome to Experts Lounge, your gateway to the captivating world of entrepreneurs. Here, passion seamlessly blends with profit and creativity dances with business acumen. I'm your host, Jonathan Tees, and I am ready to guide you through intimate conversations with today's trailblazing entrepreneurs.
So I'm excited to be sitting here today with somebody who has been a major influence in my life and has been super inspirational in the field of TV, film, as well as entrepreneurship. I know this brother extremely well. We went to school at Morehouse together, and since graduation, I've watched him decide that he would be a major player in the film and TV space, and then watch him do just that. Starting off as a production assistant and working his way up to now the title of producer on TV shows that I'm sure you've heard about. We'll talk about those in this conversation, as well as the path that he took to get here. We have none other than my brother from another, super producer, TV and film executive, Gregg Brown. How are you, man?
Hey, that was a dope intro.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to kind of embrace that term as a super producer these days.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Like, super producer is how I like to think about the archetype that you created for yourself. I'm really big on archetypes in general. My background is in marketing, which, again, you've been a big influence on pushing me in that direction. Just watching you pursue your passion as a creative and looking for ways to express my own creativity, especially as it relates to business. So the archetype of super producer and watching the people you've studied and kind of how you've navigated in a similar manner is why I think of you as a super producer.
Dope. I remember when I was was graduating at Morehouse, and I was trying to look for examples of people doing the kinds of things that I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. There weren't many. There weren't many people who were just producing TV and film, who were conscious of representation and still had the freedom to kind of pursue anything they wanted in the realm. I looked at people like Will Packer, and then people like Vashti, who was kind of just doing her own thing on the art tip. But outside of that, there wasn't much. And then when you consider like black people who were kind of doing that, who had the freedom to just kind of do whatever they wanted in the space, I didn't see many examples. So it's always important to try to be that person.
Yeah.
And so that's why the term super producer, I feel especially connected to.
Absolutely. It's very important to see how you can shape like a position or carve a role out for yourself. For me, it was very difficult for me to see, like you said, a model of what I wanted to pursue as a professional, but I kind of saw it but didn't exactly know what it was. And so what I now know as a multi-hyphenate is a term that they use for it, people that are good at doing multiple things, and that kind of allows you to explore multiple passions. So in addition to like production and the TV film producer side, what are other things that you're passionate about?
I am...
And good at. What are other things you're passionate about and good at?
I love building relationships, and I love telling stories. So I'm doing a lot of research these days to kind of help refine what that looks like for me, leaning on resources like, I'm re-listening to Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi.
That's good.
And then, I'm inundating myself in story content and story structure content, like a story by Robert McKee and Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, some of my favorites too.
Yeah. The tool of being able to communicate and connect with people and network and resource, I believe, is so underrated in the art space. And so I'd like to think of the term artpreneur that embodies that intersection between the creative and the business person. And so empowering that skill set that may not necessarily come innately, right? I think about the football player, like they're naturally gifted, so sometimes it's difficult for them to work on some of the more technical stuff because they're able to rely on their just natural talents. And so in the creative space, that's the painting and the end product itself. But those tangible things are the networking, the operations side, having a good process, and then of course the finance side. So let's talk about finances. You told me what you do and what you love, but let's talk about your finances. How do you make a profit as a creative and maximize your creative talent to sustain yourself?
Atlanta's been good to me, and the Atlanta film and TV industry has been good to me.
Yeah.
So I've been able to work on and off consistently since, for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
So my biggest checks come from working on shows like Family Hustle, So You Think You Can Dance Now, Wife Swap, The Rap Game, and countless others.
Count them. No, rattle them off.
That's check out my IMDb. But that whole space for me has been freelance.
Yeah.
So I only get, like, once a job ends, I'm kind of on my own looking for the next one. And so I have to rely heavily on my network and my work history.
Yep.
The freelance life has its pros, and there's a lot of benefits to it with the freedom that I get from that, but it has its cons too.
Yeah.
And it's tough to really set up. It has been tough to set up a system financially that makes sense and would allow me to sustain myself.
Yeah.
So what I did was I leaned into this idea of having multiple streams of income. And so whenever I am between shows, I hustle, man. The first thing is developing a skill was really important.
Yep.
So I got behind the camera, became a photographer, videographer, and now I have a handful of clients that I work with consistently whenever I'm between shows. I'm also not shy about going out and getting into the Uber, and I do that on and off for the last several years. And just over the last couple years, I got into acquiring cars that I can then rent out on the Turo platform.
Yeah.
And now I've got a small rental fleet that helps brings money in, while all the time, but it certainly helps when I'm between shows.
Absolutely. So there's a lot to dig in there. I think it's really important to differentiate the lifestyle of a W-2 employee versus somebody who freelances, aka 1099. It's a different mindset, and it can work, but like you said, it definitely has its pros and its cons. I've been on both sides of that conversation as well, and I will agree that the freedom is definitely a great aspect, but certain benefits that you don't always know that you have with the W-2 employee, or that you maybe underestimate, right? Undervalue, are healthcare. Healthcare is either inaccessible or very expensive for a 1099 employee. And unfortunately, I found out the hard way of the difference between, like, say, I don't want to say low level, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's levels to it, and I'll just leave it at that. You know what I mean? And so even having access to that saved my life. And so that's something that typically is included in a benefits package for most full-time W-2 employees. So
that is a trade-off, like you mentioned. And so for a person who might be looking to make a transition from a W-2, time off, by the way, paid time off, you know, when you get sick, things of that nature, right? Making sure that you're not missing anything. So if you have a person who is in that environment and just can't stand it and would much rather be doing what you do, what advice would you give that person?
Man, I would say think long and hard about if that's really what you want to do, because everything's kind of all on you, and some people like that responsibility, but for a lot of people it's easy to leave that in the hands of other people, like you mentioned, benefits and healthcare and everything, and there's a lot that you got to really kind of put on your own shoulders and take care of, on top of the the worry and anxiety that can come with not knowing, not having security in where your next job is coming from. So, I think I would encourage everyone or anyone considering that to really list out what the pros and cons would look like for them. Because, it is for some people, but it's not for everybody.
Absolutely.
And let me also add that I am I'm a fan of intentional lifestyle design too. So if you are going to go the freelance route, it would behoove you to kind of consider how else you're going to structure your life such that you can pursue the work you're looking to pursue and still be able to, make it make sense.
Man, I want to say this directly to this camera right here, to you personally. All right. Intentional lifestyle design. Okay. It's a concept that you may not have thought about, but is incredibly powerful, right? If you can craft how you want to live your life, for my friend Gregg, my inspiration in lifestyle design, choosing how you earn your money and separating that from what you are passionate about and finding a way to incorporate both in a way that doesn't necessarily oppose each other but kind of flows together. As little friction as possible is key. Is absolutely key. And that's something that you used to say. You had something on your vision board that said, design a lifestyle that you don't want a vacation from, or something like that. I'm summarizing it.
Yeah, something like that.
I was deeply impacted by that. It stuck with me and has obviously continued to stick with me. And I applaud you for the way that very early on, since meeting you, you decided this is what you want to do and stuck to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
man, it's very important. That quote, I think I just saw that scrolling on social media one day, but that stuck with me too. Instead of trying to wonder when our next vacation is, so that we can, essentially escape from whatever life we're living. We have the power to set up our lives such that we can have all those things.
Yeah.
It just takes some intention and focus.
So something that I also think doesn't get talked about enough, with Love, we've done a lot of work in the mental health and wellness space. And I know anxiety is real, and depression, and even seasonal depression. So around the holidays, people can be impacted. So it's a topic that has become more popular, and we are beginning to talk about it. I'm super excited about that. And as an organization, Love, we have planted a flag and have created a lot of content and a lot of projects surrounding that. And so in your world, the freelance world, and even entrepreneurship in general, the idea that you don't know where the next project is going to come from and the stress that can put on you. How do you deal with that, and how can you, you mentioned multiple streams of income, but what are some other ways that you can alleviate that feeling to help you make it to the next project, if that's your lifestyle?
from my own experience, I still deal with work anxiety a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not, at this point, it's shifted, so it's not so much about, being worried about where my next show is coming from, but since I've kind of like reached a certain level, the responsibilities are different, and I feel like with the things that are on my plate, I feel an immense pressure to, achieve and perform. And so that can be a lot before work sometimes, especially on big shoot days. But what I do is, what's been helpful for me is journaling. I journal very often, and it's a way to just kind of untangle some of the things some of the cloudiness that I could just be experiencing. And then I really appreciate being able to flip back through my journal and kind of be reminded of the path that I'm on, and it helps me to maintain perspective of my own personal story and where I am in it, and it helps. I also, for a while, was taking therapy, and that was a game changer. Honestly, I'm a little overdue for my next session, but before I started therapy, I would hear people that went to therapy say, "Oh, everybody should take therapy. It's for everybody." And while I understood it, I didn't have the wisdom to connect with that saying really until after I went through it, and I definitely feel like it's for everybody.
Yeah.
Every almost therapy to me is kind of like an oil change now.
Yeah.
It's you gotta check in, just make sure everything's working right, and that you're maintaining proper perspective.
Yeah, man. I have my personal connection to therapy. I'm actually very proud of. So, we actually used to room together as we lived in Atlanta, and I moved away to Phoenix in 2019 as a part of taking the next step in my path, right? And of course, in 2020, the pandemic happened, and then shortly after, just dealing with some of the things that happened during that time frame, I then found it to be very helpful. I had a significant death in the family, had an illness myself, so just kind of was in a car accident. So just kind of going through life, and there aren't, it wasn't devastating. I'm grateful that I made it out okay. But all these things kind of happening on top of just moving, I felt very, very helpful to just have another person to kind of help me sort through those changes. And of course, just being back in a place that I was in before in Phoenix, growing up in Phoenix, and having a person help me just kind of talk through the differences between then and now, and everything was just super impactful. So that's my personal connection with therapy. Again, I advocate for it as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, if I'm just gonna talk to somebody, I got my best friend that I'm talking to."
Yeah.
And while that is very valuable on its own,
Yeah.
It's worth it to have a professional that is going in there with the mind frame of first of all, being objective and helping you to talk through things in a situation that they're not necessarily connected to, because your best friend is,
biased as hell.
Right? He's gonna tell you what you want to hear, or or what they think is best for you, but it helps.
Yeah,
and I think it's worth it. It's worth the investment too.
Absolutely. I think that's another added benefit of some W-2 employee jobs. So I would encourage anybody who's in that W-2 position, whether they're looking to be a 1099 or not, to tap into the resources that their employer provides, because some offer programs, a certain number of visits that are paid, or part of a benefits package. So it's definitely a resource that's probably largely underused, and it doesn't take a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't take a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an oil change.
Tune up. That's dope. So
something that I really I try my best to remind you of often is the time that you have put into the game. And you started out as a production assistant and have since grown to producer. So what were kind of like the steps you had to take to get from PA to producer, and what were some of the things you kind of had to learn along the way to get there?
Okay. Aside from I'll keep it high level. I had to accept more responsibility, for one. You know, when you're a PA, you're often given tasks to do. This is stuff that nobody else wants to do, but that's why, you know, it's an entry-level situation. People are just happy to be on set. And so you got to do some of the grunt work, whether you're getting coffee, getting people's lunches, cleaning stuff that don't nobody else want to clean, whatever it may be. You're given these things. And as you get promoted or level up or whatever, you have to, one, be more forward thinking and better anticipate the production's needs. And then you have to accept the responsibility of making those things happen. Mm-hmm. It's not always going to be somebody above you giving you tasks, but you're expected to have enough experience to know and anticipate what's coming and address it before it becomes a problem. As a TV producer, and especially a reality TV producer, you're a lot like a fireman in that there are fires going on in production all the time that you're responsible for putting out. And for me specifically, I spent a lot of time, maybe like 6 or 7 years as a segment producer. For anybody that doesn't know, segment is more responsible for the logistics behind scenes. For example, if I'm on Family Hustle and they wanted to film a scene with Tip and Tiny taking the kids to the beach, all right, I'll be responsible for finding the beach that'll allow us to film, working with production management to navigate getting the proper permits. I gotta get anybody else that would be seen on camera. I'm responsible for having to get them to sign appearances, releases, and waivers and whatnot, and any props that are involved. That's all the segment producer stuff.
Yeah,
it's logistics.
That's
and
a lot.
And the scheduling.
That's a lot. I'm trying to follow it all.
I hated it. So I've since transitioned to the field and story team. It's more on the creative end versus like the logistics end. Mm-hmm. So now I'm responsible for story, talking with and building relationships with cast, and getting what we need to make the content work. Mm-hmm. I've grown to believe that story is king, and so I am fulfilled helping to get the story. Yeah. You know, I can look at stuff now and say, yo, I did that interview and I was able to get this person to this place where they're comfortable revealing this bit of information to me like this. Mm-hmm. That's fulfilling, you know what I'm saying? I can be like, yeah, I did that.
I love that.
So it's a shift in mindset too, just from that. And that in my experience specifically, I went from using one part of my brain handling the logistics for everything, to now using the other side and thinking about these shows on the creative end, and it's more art and creative on this side. Mm-hmm. It's not, when you're doing logistics, it's like, okay, do these numbers work? Does this do the dates work? It's a yes or no kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But on the creative end, there's more of an art to getting what you want. Yeah. And sometimes you're still discovering what that is as you're getting it.
I think something that's important to differentiate is how the two different sides work. One is being very structured, and the other is being a lot more free-flowing and kind of imaginative. And there's oftentimes a transition that has to happen to go out of one and into the other. And so whether that's like day-to-day or in between projects, there's a natural switching that has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's tough to just, turn the light switch on.
Yeah.
But, day after day, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get in it, I think.
Yeah. So that makes me think about the concept of balance, right? With so many different things going on, whether it's the laundry list of things as a segment producer or, the undefined tasks that are there but don't know what they are as a story and field producer, on top of personal life, on top of love, which we're still going to get to. There seems to be a lot going on. So how do you find balance in the midst of everything?
That is a great question. I don't feel like I'm as balanced as I could be. I found that for me personally, to be successful at anything I do, I have to really inundate myself in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can attest to this. Sometimes when I'm on a labor-intensive show, I'm not able to give as much attention to love.
Mm-hmm.
Or, even my personal clients, I get people that come into town and hit me up. Hey, you available to do this thing on this day? Need some photos or, a video or whatever. And I just can't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So one of the things that I have found helpful and that I appreciate, especially about love, is teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do everything yourself. It pays to have a team. And so, and to that end, having the proper support, I feel like I'm really blessed to have a really supportive family and quality circle of friends
Mm-hmm.
who are always there to offer support. And that goes a long way. Outside of that, I try to use, when I can, I like tech.
Mm-hmm.
Low key a techie, but not all the way. But so I try to use tools. We use things with love, like Later and MailChimp, to help kind of manage
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff we have going on.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
I'm an Apple guy, so I use my notes and reminders and love that I can have them on all my different devices
Mm-hmm.
kind of instantaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So support and tech
Yeah.
go a
Because-
long way for me personally.
Absolutely, man. It's almost like having your own personal assistant in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But something you mentioned about love and the support system made me think about the power of community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been actually dying to do this real quick. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just go ahead and handle this part real quick. Wanted to make sure that was on camera. Love, man. Let's talk about this community that we have really carved out for ourselves and how we look to continue to offer resources and be positive influence to this community.
You're asking about community.
Yeah, community, man. Listen. So, me, you, and AJ, aka Alfred Nomad, decided that individually we had skill sets that were complementary, right? Which is way back in the day, running the AUC campus area, and you picked up a camera and decided this is what you want to do. You had the flip cam situation.
I did have the flip cam.
AJ really impressed me because he was a college student. He did an album release party. I was playing football at the time. I didn't get an opportunity to make his album release, but I caught him caught the let out. And so we connected. I was producing music in the dorm, and I gave AJ an instrumental, and the very next day he sent me a recorded song and gave me a concept for a video that he wanted to shoot. Me, I'm an entrepreneur, business person. I think of myself as a professional dot connector. So I'm like, yo, Greg, let's do this. Let's put it together. And I feel like that's the foundation of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's creatives coming together and, using their resources to better the community.
So how is Gregg Brown
a contributor to this creative community. There is a person who was looking to do what we were trying to do all those years ago, and you are super producer Gregg Brown. What do you have to say to, let's say, your younger self? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that there's not just power in the community, but the community is the power. That's where the relationships are that are going to benefit you personally and creatively, and that's where your opportunities are going to come from. I think like humans are always looking for, we have this desire to feel accepted, and we're communal beings, so connecting with like-minded people, your tribe, is immensely beneficial. More than just the work. I mean, just being around people that see you is
understand the challenges that you face.
Yeah.
So in those moments when, you know, you're really having those doubts, you know, how do I do it? What do I need to do? Somebody else that can either offer support because their experience has shown them that it'll happen, or they can give you advice that helps you secure the next opportunity, or can also are probably into the same thing. So it can offer some, you know, good times and, you know, just positive energy, positive reinforcement.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, one of the reasons I really appreciate Love and the Love Collective is because I see myself a lot like Batman, right? By day, I'm working on these TV shows, you know, rubbing elbows and politicking with, you know, the day's hottest reality stars. But by night, I'm a independent filmmaker, photographer, vigilante for the culture.
Yeah.
And Love allows me to stay tapped in with the creative community that fuels me.
Yeah. Going back to archetypes to bring it full circle, Bruce Wayne is definitely a great archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Batman.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to see your growth. I'm excited to just have a front row seat to all of it, man. The way you've handled yourself, again, I think a lot of the people aspire for a level of freedom, and I don't know that they have the responsibility and the discipline to really sustain it. I have a reminder on my phone that says I do what I have to do so I can do what I want to do. And that is a mindset that I don't think comes natural, but I think you exude it very well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do it without the team.
Absolutely, man.
That's for sure.
Totally. So is there anything in particular that you want to make sure that people know about?
So we were talking about what our individual contributions to Love are. And for anybody that follows my personal social media knows that I like to travel and do a lot of travel photography. So what we are doing now exclusively for our Patreon members, our Patreon community, is we're offering some of these travel photos by way of mobile wallpaper backgrounds. So anybody that's a member to the Patreon can go on there and check it out, download the first pack. We'll update them periodically, and you know, you can set them on your phone such that they'll rotate every so often. So tap in with Love. And
what does that do for you?
What does what do for me?
Having them rotate frequently.
On a personal level?
Yeah, what does that do for you personally?
Oh yeah. Well, I like having my photos rotate on my desktop background because for one, it reminds me of the places that I was when I took these pictures.
Yeah.
And I like to think that I communicate storytelling through these travel photos too. If you know, reference any of them, and you might see where the sun is positioned. I'm big on composition. And after studying kind of like where people's eyes, how they read pictures, they're aesthetically pleasing, and I like to think that they take the audience on a journey, myself included.
Honestly, to that point, I actually want to lift the hood back just a little bit, because everything that you're seeing on this camera right now was set up and structured and framed artistically, visually by you.
Yeah, man. This is another endeavor for us. I'm trying to do better about, producing more, basically, right? If I'm going to be the super producer, I got to continue to produce. And I'm grateful to have a team that will allow me the space to keep experimenting and practicing things. And so this is just kind of the next expression of that.
Yeah. Man, I feel like we covered so much in this conversation. If there's anything I wanted anybody to walk away from this conversation, it's the idea of setting a path, and a North Star, as I like to call it, a target, and heading in that general direction. And even if you have to take alternative routes sometimes, or if the path isn't as straight to the point as you thought it might be, that's okay. But continuing to walk in that direction and lean on the people that you have surrounding you to kind of help support you as best they can in any way they can. And honestly, just kind of being great at what you do.
Yeah. Don't undervalue the community.
Yeah.
The people that are going to get you to that next level are right around you right now.
Man. So, this has been awesome, man. Tell the people where to find you.
You can find me on social media at Skybox Cinema. That's Instagram, that's Twitter, and just about everything else.
Yeah, man. I am the expertise on social media. That's at TheExperTease, my last name, Tease. On social media. Man, I'm looking forward to this and what this is gonna turn into, man. I really, I'm honored that you would be the producer of this show, continuing to dive into this artpreneur space to share our personal expertise both through storytelling and conversation. And yeah, man, it's the start of something really good. And until the next time I see you, I wish you all peace and love, and always seek expertise.